Welcome everyone. On behalf of Columbia University, the School of Professional Studies, and in particular, our new Masters in Wealth Management program, it is my pleasure to welcome you all to this, our fourth speaker series event, where from time to time, we ask industry thought leaders and senior leading advisors to come and share with us their thoughts and perspectives on the developments of our fast evolving industry. My name is Philipp. I'm a senior advisor to the program, and I'll be your moderator today. Today's topic is one dear to my heart. It is the power of client segment focus. And while I cannot wait to introduce our three great panelists, who, although they work on very different platforms, really have interesting niche focuses, allow me a few words on the Masters in Wealth Management program, and let me give you a feel for the arc of today's discussion. Columbia University's new Masters in Wealth Management program is a 16-month online part-time program that equips existing and aspiring wealth management professionals with all they need to meet the many challenges and opportunities that our industry provides. It is currently the only Masters in Wealth Management offered by an Ivy League institution. And if you want to learn more, please simply type Columbia University and Wealth Management into a web browser of your choice. You may also join us again tomorrow afternoon at 5 p.m. Eastern for an interactive Q&A with our recent crop of graduates. The registration link for that event is still open online. When it comes to today's discussion, we'll be having a 40-minute prepared panel dialogue with three great leading advisors, followed by a dynamic Q&A. Our students submitted some questions already. If you are inclined to submit a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screens, and towards the end, I'll relay the questions to our panelists. And with that, let us welcome our great panelists, starting with Jamie Ratner Rich. Jamie has a long suit in financial planning. She works with the KCP Group, independent group on the Stifel platform out of Indiana, and her particular client focus is business owners and executives. Welcome, Jamie.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm excited to speak with you today. As Philipp mentioned, I have had the privilege and the honor of partnering alongside, in particular, entrepreneurs and business owners and their families, in particular around multi-generational businesses, for over 20 years. And it has been a true delight to be able to work with them. And I found my home here at the KCP Group in Indiana. Thank you.
We are thrilled to have you. We also welcome Rachel Brenner. Rachel is a senior private banker with JP Morgan in New York, sitting on one of the leading global private bank platforms. Her and her team focus on private equity, both in terms of the partners on the individual side and the firms on the institutional side. She will have a lot of great perspectives to share with us. Welcome, Rachel. It's great to see you again.
Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Last not least, we welcome Russ Thornton. Russ is a almost 30-year veteran of our industry. Amongst others, he's the founder and leader of Wealthcare for Women, an independent RIA out of Georgia. And as per his LinkedIn profile, Russ helps women in their 50s and 60s retire with clarity, comfort, and confidence. Cannot wait to learn more about that. Welcome, Russ.
Thanks, Philip. Great to be here. Excited to join the conversation today.
Awesome. As we dive in, maybe to get to know the three of you a little bit better, let's start with a quick speed round of icebreaker type questions. Short questions, short answers. Let's have the sequence for now be Jamie, Rachel, Russ. First off, during the pandemic, many of us discovered new TV shows and or podcasts. What is your favorite podcast or TV show these days?
I've been listening to Infinite Loops with Jim O'Shaughnessy.
I
Rachel?
would say, in terms of a show, I got well into The Americans.
The Americans.
Yes, terrific.
Yeah, so my podcast of choice these days is Huberman Labs, which is a Stanford neuroscientist who goes really deep into different health topics.
Huberman Labs.
Yep.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. Next quickie. Assume you could meet a person and have dinner with that person, dead or alive. Who would be your ideal dinner guest for a night?
I would have loved to have had the opportunity to meet Philipp K. Dick. He is a science fiction writer from the 50s, and I have always thoroughly enjoyed and been inspired by his writing.
Any book of his that we may recall?
Well, you all may be familiar with Blade Runner. That was probably the first. It's Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? Or most recently, The Man in the High Castle was the television show on Amazon.
Wonderful. Rachel?
I would say Golda Meir. One of the the strongest women in the history of Israel's existence.
Wonderful. Russ?
Abraham Maslow. I think many folks are probably familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and I'm endlessly fascinated by the psychology that comes into decision-making, specifically around money.
Excellent. I'm sure that's a common thread that will pop up in our discussion. Two more quickies before we get serious. In terms of next big travel destination, anything on your radar? Where is your mental mind? Where is your heart going?
Well, Rachel, I'm glad you mentioned Golda Meir, one of my favorites too. We are actually headed for our 4th time to Israel, but our first time with my 8-year-old. We hosted 2 Israeli girls over the summer, and we are headed to take him to experience the joy there.
That's great. I'm headed to Paris with 7 of my closest girlfriends. We all had a milestone birthday in the last 18 months. I won't say which one, but we obviously haven't had a chance to celebrate. So we are leaving everything behind and going to Paris for a long weekend all together.
Rachel, welcome to legal drinking in America. Russ?
Thanks.
So my wife and I, this would have been spring of last year, kind of in the height of the pandemic. We actually escaped and went to Turks and Caicos for a long week, and we had such a good time. We're already planning on trying to get back there sooner than later.
Last quick one for now. A client of yours asks you for a book recommendation when it comes to investing. What book on investing do you like to recommend?
Oh my gosh, that's a good one. I've only been reading about teaching your family about wealth recently. That has been the biggest question. So I have a cadre of inherited wealth books on my desk, but I don't have a specific one that is my favorite right now. They're all good.
Excellent.
I'll have to send them for the follow-up.
I would say the little green book of value investing. Always a great place to start.
I would suggest The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. It's an easy and interesting read. It's not dry, and it really drives home some of the underlying motivations behind our decisions, for better or worse.
Some great recommendations, including the non-investment stuff that Jamie referred to. I would be remiss not to put in a plug for one of your predecessors. We had the great honor and privilege of speaking to Charlie Ellis in October of 2020, and obviously his Winning the Loser's Game is still a classic in our space. After that little speed round, great to get to know you a little bit better that way, let's shift gears into the topic at hand. Although all 3 of you, as mentioned, work on very different business models and platforms, you have a big common red thread, and that is you all focus on a particular client niche, a particular client segment. Maybe again in the sequence, Jamie, Rachel, Russ, would you each mind spending a few minutes bringing your firm, your practice and your niche focus to life? Why did you pick that particular client segment?
Sure. So I came out of undergrad and did not expect to go into this industry. And so made a pivot at 25 years old to enter into private banking. And as a result, as I was doing my MBA at the time, I found business owners to be the most approachable. They were the group that I could call and partner often with a commercial banker to get in the door and start a conversation as a 24-year-old and begin to really understand what they were trying to do. And it turned out I really loved what they were doing. They were all creative. They cared about their communities. They cared about their families, which really resonated with my own personal value system. So I also realized they viewed investing differently. They could make a lot of money themselves, and they wanted us to be a different kind of partner to them than maybe an entry-level investor would want from a partnership. And so I partnered strongly with commercial bankers on a private bank team back in the day, and really just focused in on how could we add more value in this space. I also found, as a young woman in the industry at the time, entrepreneurs valued hard work, speed to market, responsiveness, creativity, not always having the answer, but being willing to look for the answer and bringing new answers to the table. And they also really appreciated that I really forced engagement of the entire family, which was something that was not being done as often 20 years ago. And honestly, it was just so much fun. I really can't say anything other than it was so fun to learn about products that companies were making and services that I just found myself so interested. And one client was friends with another, who was friends with another, and really the business just took off in that direction. So I just feel that I fell into it by staying open-minded, being willing to learn, asking a lot of questions, and really building a team of resources around me that could help me deliver the best solutions to differentiate myself from other people that were out there.
That's great. My story is a little bit different. I've been on my team, the financial sponsors group at JP Morgan now for 13 years, which is hard to believe. I joined the group right out of business school. And so one could say that the team chose me as much as I chose it. And so, but I feel like I really got lucky in that regard. The private equity community that I work with is phenomenal. It's a great group of individuals to work with. They tend to be very family oriented. And the culture at these firms that I cover, I like to describe it as one that's very water cooler centric. If you think about the way private equity firms make decisions, they have investment committees that the senior partners sit on, rather than having one or two people at the top of the stack making all of the decisions. It's very much a consensus driven group of individuals. And I find that they bring that culture to our meetings. And it's very much a dialogue between me and my clients about how we are going to make decisions, whether it is on the investing side, the trust and estate planning side, anything as simple as introducing their children to investing and getting them involved in the conversation about wealth. So I often say I learn as much from my clients as I teach them. And I feel very lucky to have been born into this family. And I feel as though it's been a terrific, obviously, bull market for the private equity industry over the last 13 years that I've been here. But over that time, I've built some fantastic relationships and gotten to know my clients very well. And as Philipp mentioned, I also cover private equity firms. And so that additional touch point with the firms that they work at and have founded oftentimes really adds another dimension to our relationship.
Rachel, would you mind expanding a little bit on that? Because it's kind of
Sure.
unusual, not often seen to have individual and institutional focus within the same team. What
Absolutely.
are the types of services and value adds you provide to the partners versus the institutions, and how do the two relate?
Sure, absolutely. The origin of my team dates back about 25 years, frankly, so a long time. And back then, the private equity industry looked a lot different, very much smaller, fewer players, and the funds were, of course, a lot smaller. And back then, Jimmy Lee, who ran our investment banking effort at the time, recognized that this was going to be a critical population of people to the Chase and now JP Morgan brand, and recognized there was no home for private equity partners or their firms within the bank. So if you think about the prime industry really services hedge funds, there was no equivalent for the private equity industry. And so my former boss and Jimmy Lee wrote the business plan together and created my team. And the reason why, Philipp, the two are housed together within the private bank, so we provide services to individuals and provide services to their firms, and I'll get into that in a minute, is because you really can't separate a partner from his or her firm. Of course, over the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of these private equity firms go public. And so that has changed the nature of what we do a little bit. But we still see these as some of the last great partnerships left. And it's really a way to provide excellent institutional level services to these partners and their firms. So on the partner side, I like to describe it as 4 legs to our stool. So banking, investing, lending, and trust and estate planning. We don't replace the lawyers in any way, but we work alongside them. And then on the institutional side, it's focused on cash management, of course, which is elementary to what private equity firms do day in and day out. Obviously, keeping keeping it a well-oiled machine to make sure the capital calls come in and the funds go out to just facilitate their deal. So that's critical, as well as lending. We do a lot of that, and then any other liquidity needs that they have, whether it be on the FX side or related to stock distributions, we have those capabilities as well.
Excellent. Thank you for the clarification. Jamie, I couldn't help but notice how you were violently nodding when Rachel mentioned the difficulties of separating the personal from the business. I trust the same dynamics ring true with your business owners and entrepreneurs as well. We'll revisit that in a minute. However, Russ, if you don't mind come in with your very different niche that you're focused on.
So I've been an advisor for almost 30 years now. I started with Merrill Lynch and have since gone through a couple of iterations to my current structure. And over my career, I found myself working with more and more women and really enjoying working with women. And this is not exclusive to single women, although I have a lot of women that have been dealing with divorce, widowhood, but I also have a lot of very happily married couples, which is fantastic as well. And what I noticed over the years is I really wish my mom would have gotten some of the same advice and guidance that I'm able to give these women. And the reason I mention that is when I was coming out of college, way back when, my mom and dad went through a divorce, and it turned out to be a pretty ugly divorce. My dad had been very successful. He was actually career financial services. My mom had been a stay-at-home mom. She took care of my 2 younger brothers and I. And long story short, she got a lot of assets, a lot of alimony, a lot of child support. She got the house. She got some retirement accounts. She got some pension dollars. Fast forward today, she's in her mid-70s and she is more or less broke. She gets Social Security and some pension money that she got from the divorce settlement. And that's about it. I'll be the first to admit she made some poor decisions, but I can't help but wonder if she had gotten better advice and guidance along the way. It could have been a very, very different outcome. And my brothers and I, we love her, but we're going to be dealing with her for the rest of her life. And we're happy to do that, but we discuss all the time, like what could have this how could this have been different? And so all that to say, I've kind of about 8 years ago now, I kind of embraced the idea of really deliberately serving women. And so I've kind of built this brand, as you mentioned, Philipp, this brand called Wealthcare for Women. I operate as a independent advisory or investment advisor rep inside of a larger RIA called Wealthcare Capital Management. They're based in Richmond, Virginia. I have my own clients. I have my own P&L inside the business. So I think and act very much like an entrepreneur inside of a larger organization. I'm just blessed. I think Jamie was kind of commenting earlier, like I'm blessed to be in a career that I love. I get to do well by helping people do well. I've found and have gotten feedback from my clients over the years that my particular approach to communications and advice and planning philosophy seems to resonate really well, generally speaking, with women. And so I just kind of embraced it and jumped in with both feet. And so here I am today, and I'm just loving every day.
Wonderful. Thank you for telling that personal story and strong intrinsic motivation that got you to your particular niche focus. All three of you began to discuss the benefits of client segment focus, why it makes sense for an advisor to really go deep in a well-defined segment. I want to double click on that particular dynamic by first sharing a quick page here that is hopefully building up for all of you to see. It is just an overview I found online that addresses the many dimensions of benefits that client segment focus can have for financial advisors. If you don't mind, in the same sequence, Jamie, Rachel, Russ, would you mind bringing some of the pros of client segment focus to life? How does your niche focus manifest itself? What do you actually do differently than a generalist, advisor out there? How do you differentiate yourself? And what are the benefits of that, both for your clients and for your practice?
Yeah, I think there are a lot of benefits. I mean, first of all, I think different people who do different things each share different behaviors. So for example, the individual who decides to become a business owner has a certain level of confidence in themselves and their own ability and the way to manage risk, in particular important to the type of work that we all do with families. And they view their risk that they take as a completely different bucket of risk than what they ask us to take for them at the end of the day. And so when we come in with that mutual understanding and can articulate it differentiates us right out of the gate. The next part is business owners as compared to private equity or corporate executives in particular have different types of compensation plans, different types of retirement plan options, but most specifically, they tend to be very interested in transferring businesses to their family or dealing with growing it and taking it public or selling it. And those are very specialized buckets of knowledge that take a lot of time to work on. So focusing on families who encounter that particular set of circumstances has allowed me to, first of all, build a network that is completely focused on that. So creating a deep tranche of resources that could be available for all of those families to be able to leverage as they move through life. And then to give me the opportunity to learn a lot and share a lot of anecdotal evidence around how other families have handled certain situations. We all as humans kind of like to be around people that have things in common with ourselves. And so knowing that the person you choose to partner with also knows a lot of other people like you and like your family and can connect and share them is very helpful. And it also allows me to kind of say, hey, this is a bucket of things I don't know. Let me call you someone else. And inadvertently, that establishes a lot of credibility along the way as well. It's okay to say this is a portion of work that I'm not as good at. I've always been very fortunate that I've been part of a team, whether it was in my prior world at JP Morgan or today with the team I'm on now, where while I'm the expert on business owners, we have other experts. So there's no problem with bringing in someone else who just happens to know more about a specific area.
That's great, Jamie. You spoke so well about the qualitative benefits of what we do and how we do it. And I completely echo that. Being able to walk into a room and tell a client what like-minded, like-situated individuals are doing is very, very powerful. I'll speak a little bit to the quantitative benefits to what we do and how we do it. Efficiency is the name of the game, right? We need to be efficient with our time, and we need to be efficient with our clients' time as well. I mean, this is, unless they're retired, which I've now had several clients do so in the last few years, which is a nice change to my business. But most of them have day jobs, and those day jobs, prior to the pandemic, of course, involved a lot of travel and working hours. And then, of course, their families are critical, a critical way to spend their time. So I get a very small sliver of their capacity. And so sitting in a meeting with someone and being able to deliver that advice in a cohesive and thoughtful way on a no names basis, of course, because what we do, privacy is obviously of critical importance. But being able to do so resonates very well with my clients. And on the efficiency side, we only have so many hours in the day. And so being able to use your existing client base as a source of referrals, and having them either asking them for referrals, which is something that took me a long time to do in the start of my career, but now I've gotten quite used to it, of course. So asking for referrals to their network, and no one knows who is an up and comer in their own firm than a senior partner, him or herself. So asking them to identify who is going to do well at their firm, or just asking someone to stand up and speak on your behalf if you are prospecting someone in the industry. Both of those are incredibly powerful ways to be very efficient with your time.
I'm tempted to basically just say ditto. Jamie and Rachel kind of covered the bases. I would add that I would add to Rachel's comments around efficiency, but more holistically around just the idea of building and running a business. When you first start, you don't have any clients, you have an overabundance of time, but as you start to bring on clients, you have to balance, how do I spend my time taking care of my current clients versus going out and finding new clients? And so, as I think Jamie and Rachel both did a very nice job of alluding to, what's the most efficient or easiest or path of least resistance to go about, finding more clients while still managing and nurturing your current clients? And I think the best way to do that is to find clients that are similar. And a lot of research, industry research, backs this up, that clients choose advisors, and more importantly, stay with advisors because their advisor understands them. It's not portfolio performance, although that's important. Client service is important, but it's really an advisor who takes the time to get to know them and understand who they are, what's important to them, what their motivations are, what their values are, et cetera, et cetera. And the more you can develop some degree of commonalities across your clients, I think it's going to make your life easier as an advisor. And I think it ultimately results in a better client experience for your clients, because you can draw upon experiences working with other clients and find solutions that you might have been talking to another client about just last week, and bring that to bear to solve something that you're discussing with a client today. So I think it's just, frankly, an easier and dare I say, smarter way to grow the business. But more importantly, it's a great way to nurture and maintain the business and take care of your current clients.
Thank you for sharing those perspectives and those, ways of bringing to life the benefits of client segments focus. I want to add to that by sharing 2 pages real quick. One is, I hope you can see this all, from recent Kitz's research on the advantages of niching, where Michael Kitzes and his team were indeed able to quantify the benefits for advisors that have a niche versus those they don't, in terms of more time spent client-facing with clients and prospects, better client loadings, higher investable asset levels, and higher AUM fees in very quantifiable ways. Likewise, the good people at the XYPN network in their annual benchmarking study compared practices with versus without niche focus. And as you can see, regardless if it's very young, medium tenured, or growing, established practices, those that focus on a particular client segment tend to do much better than those that don't, just underscoring what you already mentioned here. All of you brought to life in your comments the notion of peer-to-peer interactions amongst your clients. Let me ask you a quick follow-up there. Maybe we reverse the order. Russ, Rachel, Jamie, are there specific examples where you support peer-to-peer interaction, that exchange amongst your clients and prospects amongst themselves, given the large common denominator that they have, and given their interest in not only learning from you, but also from each other? Are there some examples you can share?
I think that's a wonderful idea. I have experimented with that in the past. So a few years ago, well pre-pandemic, I experimented with doing a Wealthcare for Women Wednesday. And so I think the second Wednesday of every month, I would rent a meeting space here in Atlanta and invite clients, their friends, basically anyone that wants to come in. We would just have an open, safe space to answer questions, share stories, that sort of thing. I don't know if it was the Atlanta traffic or if it was trying to do it on Wednesdays or whatever. It just never really got a lot of traction. So I would have maybe half a dozen people show up. We had some really good conversations. I was told that some of the women that did show up really enjoyed meeting other women that had similar questions or were in similar stages of life. Beyond that, though, I haven't had a lot of success in trying to build a community around my clientele, although I know of other advisors that do and have had a lot of success with that.
I found the topic that brings people together most successfully is trust and estate planning. So I have done some events, both where we mix clients from different firms all together. And I participated in one, which was a female focused event where we talked about the benefits of trust and estate planning early and often. And then within going into the private equity firms that we cover and bringing our resources inside the firm and facilitating a conversation amongst the partners about how to, again, do trust and estate planning early and often. But I would say beyond that, that generates a conversation and gets the ideas flowing, and people can turn to each other and say, oh, what are you doing on the trust and estate planning? Oh, okay, I haven't considered that. But it's a very specific discussion point. Obviously, people's balance sheets look very different than one another, and they have different views on how much wealth they want to pass to the next generation. So it is something where we talk in generalities at those types of events, but it's difficult to obviously get very specific to each client's needs. So we don't get a lot of questions at those types of events that aren't general in nature, obviously.
I agree, Rachel. That is a really great conversation starter and one we all should be talking about more. So it's a great place to fit. And with business owners, I think it's very individualized and very customized. So Rachel also made a point about privacy that is so important. We always value and respect the privacy of our relationships. And so we always want to have permission before we make these introductions. But with that in mind, business owners can help each other in all kinds of ways, be potential clients, have jobs and internships for each other's children, have a community engagement project that they would like to be involved with because they have a philanthropic interest in the community as well. And so I've tried to really listen and get to know the families that I partner with on a very personal and deep level, knowing the 2 to 3 generations of the family. And then in doing so, that's where the ask for the connectivity comes into play. So one family may have a child that's interested in doing X, and so does some other company that we work with do that, and can we make a connection there and introduce the families over a dinner? And maybe there are some other opportunities that come for that. Or sometimes we look to them as to what they want to learn more about. So for example, there's been a recent creation of wealth, you may have noticed, from the last few years in the market. And we've had a lot of entrepreneurs shift and grow their businesses in a way where aviation and personal aviation has been especially interesting. People have wanted to purchase a plane or part of a plane or a NetJet subscription. And that's very complicated. And how do we make a decision about that? So we have a call tomorrow with an attorney and a CPA just focused on that. And everyone who chooses to come had to agree that they would be able to interact on the Zoom and know that they are connected with our team somehow. So there's a common interest right away. It brings people into a forum together, and they can choose to follow up or ask for introductions from each other at that point.
Thank you for sharing that. Before we move on from that round, a set of observations and one last follow-up. My observation is interesting to me how you, Jamie, emphasized the benefits of understanding the particular tax profiles and the risks and opportunities that come from that for your particular client segment. Oftentimes I find that indeed is one of the key value adds that you can bring to the table. Rachel, of the many things you shared, what resonated with me is speaking the language, literally speaking the language of the niche at hand. How important is that to understand it right and to be perceived, the right way in return? And Russ, from your angle, the emotional fit, being able to, not only intellectually, but also as an empathetic human being to connect with the client in his or her life stage and situation, certainly beneficial for all. Quick follow-up before we move to the next round. Saying yes to well-fitting clients implies saying no to not so well-fitting clients. How do you manage that challenge, and what do you do? Jamie and Rachel, you are blessed with a large organization that is very, multifaceted and has competencies on many angles. So I guess for you, it's easy to make introductions and refer those clients or prospects into an even better fitting, part of your organization. Add any color you may want. But Russ, let's maybe start with you. How do you say no? When do you say no? How do you find that balance? How do you manage that tension?
Well, I think most of us are advisors or interested in becoming advisors because we want to help people, and so saying no is very difficult. Even when my gut is screaming and there's red flags flying everywhere, I still want to find ways to help people. Having said that, I've learned the hard way over many years that it's best to focus on my strengths and help people find a better advisor relationship, even if I'm not involved. And so for me, there are typically a couple of, showstoppers where there's just first and foremost, regardless of how wealthy or their financial profile, there has to be a personality fit, because if I am going to take on the responsibility of working with this person or this family for hopefully the next 15 or 20 years, it needs to be somebody that I enjoy spending time with, speaking with, getting to know, and hopefully vice versa. So I think personality fit is super important and is maybe often not given enough weight among advisors in general. Beyond that, I think there has to be a philosophical alignment in terms of how do we think about tax planning or investing or the use of insurance or financial planning. Are they super aggressive and want to push the envelope all the time across the board? Are they more conservative? And does that align with the way that I see the world and the way that I think that I can best serve them? When it comes to someone that's not a fit, and I have to step up and say, I'd love to help you, but I don't think that I'm the best professional to add value to your situation. I will do one of two things. I used to just say, like, here are three names. Good luck. And I that didn't really sit well with me. So I've since tried to take a much more personal approach and say, I would recommend that you speak to this advisor. And here's why. I know them based on what I've gotten to know from you. I think you guys would be a good fit. And here's why I think they would be a better fit than I would be a fit. Sometimes that's another advisor in my parent firm. More often it's an advisor outside of my firm that's maybe here in Atlanta or in another geographic area, depending on the location of the client. And so I just try to be very, diplomatic about it, but I also want to make that decision early and try to help the client find the best solution, whether that's my involvement or not.
Excellent. Jamie, Rachel, anything to add?
No, I would just say, you know, it's beneficial to underpromise and overdeliver in this business. And I go back to efficiency. So if your client and expectations, frankly, so as long as everyone's expectations are aligned, then I think, you know, it's certainly fine to cover someone outside my niche. And sometimes it's a fun and interesting challenge to do so. But generally speaking, I think my clients are best served when I keep my focus.
Got it. One more speed round, and then we'll shift into great questions that have been coming in from the audience. We discussed the many pros of client segment focus for clients and you as advisors. Are there any cons to be aware of? Are there any downsides to manage? If so, what are they and how do you approach them? In no particular order, maybe Rachel first.
Sure. You know, I think a downside is obviously your own personal growth. As I mentioned, covering clients within a niche, I tend to have blinders on a little bit. And I'm lucky to work at a firm with tremendous resources and surrounded by advisors covering other types of clients. And so it's good to pick your head up and listen to what else is going on. And there's actually a women's forum that was recently created during the pandemic. So we have an exchange of advisors covering different niches, and we present to each other so that if you do have a client who or potential client that pops up who is in a different segment than you usually cover, you either have an expert to go to and you can pick up the phone and easily call that colleague to get some help. But you or you already have the sound bites sort of somewhere in your brain to pull them out and to help facilitate at least that initial conversation.
Jamie, anything to add?
Yeah, I'd add maybe not a con, but a myth. The biggest argument I hear about focusing on a niche is, am I going to miss out on opportunities? Am I going to miss clients that fall outside of my niche? And I think that's a valid question, but I think it's a myth because the advisors that I know well that have decided to focus on a niche or a client segment, they still get opportunities outside that niche all the time. And then they can make the decision whether or not they choose to work with them or not. So I think one of the mental hurdles to deciding to focus on a niche is, am I narrowing my addressable market or am I narrowing my opportunity too much? I don't think that's the case. Based on what I've heard from Jamie and Rachel, I don't think they would disagree with that, but I hear that a lot, and I just don't think that that's really a problem.
I think almost everyone stays a generalist. I think we have to be generalists in this industry because tax law changes all the time, estate law changes all the time, business structure opportunities change all the time. My private companies go public. So we have to continue to be vigilant in our pursuit of education around broad wealth management. So that allows us a great deal of flexibility. And then, at least for me, over a couple of different firms and a long career, I've always had great teams around me where if I wanted to learn more about something, I could. And so it didn't feel that limiting. So but I always look at something as an opportunity as opposed to a con. How could we do it differently or better? And I would encourage anyone going into this industry to quickly adopt that mindset. I think it's very beneficial in this space.
That's great advice, Jamie. Yeah, I second that.
And it's a wonderful transition to some great questions that our students submitted before the session and that are coming in right now via the Q&A functionality. One of our audience members live right now is wondering, for a career starter, for a person transitioning into wealth management, would you recommend starting as a generalist by design and then over time finding a niche? Or would you recommend going deep from the get-go, doubling down on the niche thinking and type of work? What would be your advice on that front?
I would encourage maybe, so the analogy that comes to mind to me is like if you go to college as a freshman and you know exactly what you want to study and what you want to major in, that's one thing. I was not that person. Based on my personal experience, I think you start more of a generalist and decide what you want to do and who you want to serve and what part of the industry you like. And I would also encourage people to expose yourself to different aspects of the industry as much as possible, because there are, I think as the three of us maybe exemplify, there are a lot of ways to serve clients in this industry, all of them wonderful. And so I would go in with a very open mind and open approach and spend a little time exploring and figuring out what it is you want to do and who it is you want to serve. And then you've got the opportunity to go really deep.
Yeah, the thing I would add to that, Russ, is being a generalist doesn't mean you're not an expert, right? And I think clients come to us because we are experts. Jamie said it, you can't be expected to know everything about every topic, of course. And I second that. But at the same time, if you do choose to go the generalist route, make sure that you focus on the very fine details of whatever topics you choose, right? And you think that are relevant to your, to at least your initial clients or to the clients that you think you're going to be serving. One example I can bring is one from one of my bosses who back during the financial crisis, had to study and understand the difference between having client assets custodied at a wirehouse or a bank on a bank custody platform. I mean, that's an extreme nuance that, of course, luckily we're way past those days where we're talking about those situations. But he learned the difference between the two and could speak with authority to his client base. So again, just becoming an expert about the things that you think drive your clients to come to you for advice is critical to being successful in this business.
Got it. Now, a follow-up question somewhat related. All three of you spoke to the benefits of going deep in a segment and having an easier time asking for referrals and building a network, building a self-sustaining, rejuvenating business from within, creating that infamous flywheel. Can you share with us best practices when and how? What do you actually say to get good referral flow into your practice?
Yeah, that's really important because just throwing out there, hey, can you help me with my practice? Not particularly an effective strategy, although used often. I think this is a really critical component. I think as part of getting to know the families you partner with over time, it's important that you know who are the circle of people they surround themselves with. who are the people that are important to them in their world. And in doing so, you can quickly determine some additional connectivity. It would be very infrequent, for example, for a successful business owner here in Indianapolis to not be participating in some other type of forum, like a young president's organization or some other mentoring group themselves, helping them grow and learn and develop themselves. And so knowing what that group is and specifically saying, hey, I think you seem to be friends with so-and-so, and could we all just grab a drink sometime? I'd love to get to know more of your friends, has always been very effective for me. And serving on boards in the community that I was very passionate about inadvertently put me in front of a lot of business owners who had the opportunity to just see the type of work that I did and what I cared about and realized it might translate back to their families. So being intentional and specific, but most importantly, being strongly authentic in the places that you are participating, I think is critical. In this day and age, it becomes transparent very quickly if any of us are not in a place out of earnest desire to be impactful and taking that opportunity. So look around, who are the people that you have chosen to surround yourself with and what's important to them? And can you parlay that into developing a niche in the future?
I would just add briefly that it's my belief that clients refer you as their advisor to their friends and family because they want to help their friends and family. And the more that you're solving similar solutions for a common group of people, whether that's women in my case, or business owners, or private equity firms, as Rachel's working on, it's more likely that the problem you're solving for your client is going to be something that maybe their friend is dealing with or going with. So I think a byproduct, which we're kind of all talking about here, of having a niche or a client segment focus is it almost kind of breeds referrals just by nature of talking to and getting to know a similar group of people. And you're going to be recognizing and dealing with similar, at least at a core level, similar problems, similar issues, similar life transitions. And I think that just lends itself to for people to talk about, how you help them with their friends and family. So I think it's kind of a virtuous circle.
Got it, guys. Before we wrap it up with a unconstrained round of your sage advice to new or shifting advisors, let me pick up one more audience question. And that is, let's assume you're an advisor that's been a generalist so far, that believes your thesis, that wants to pick a niche. Is there a certain process? Is there a set of factors you would suggest considering to make sure that person fits a good niche? How do you determine a good niche? What should that person think about when selecting a niche?
I would, I'll throw out briefly, just, don't make it more difficult on yourself. If you have a group of clients, whether that's 5 or 50 or 500, look at your current clients first and maybe look for common threads. Do they work for do a lot of them work for the same company, or a lot of them in the same industry, or do a lot of them share other professional or demographic or psychographic characteristics? And then if you identify something, go out and have some conversations with them and say, hey, I'm thinking about focusing on more clients like you. If you were me, how would you best go about that? And just have a conversation and see where it goes. I think that's maybe a good place to start.
That's great advice, Russ. I would add to that. One, it's very dependent on the geography in which you're going to be operating in, right? Our business doesn't have to be local, but it can be. So a great place to start is in whatever city you're in, looking at the dynamics of the economy and seeing where what industries are growing and where there's money in motion. I'll never forget it when I was thinking about entering this industry. My older brother and I were driving from Philadelphia to New York City, and we were passing all the ports of Newark. And, he made a comment about the ports, and I was like, oh, well, why is that critical? He's like, well, why is that critical? This is how, this makes our economy run. And there are owners of, there are people who own these businesses that drive the economy. And I'll never forget that comment. It really changed the way I think about money in motion and the way I think about our economy. It may not be interesting or sexy to own or operate a port. Maybe now it is, because that's all we're talking about, supply chain dynamics. But when you're starting out, a lot of people want to cover tech executives and, the interesting and flashy businesses, but don't forget about the fundamentals that run our economy.
Jamie, anything to add?
I agree with both of those, and just those are wonderful advice.
Let me summarize it. It seems to me that you're encouraging folks to think about the economic viability of the niche itself. Is there enough of them nearby that I can get to? Are they ideally growing? And then, Russ, picking up on some of your themes from earlier, are you interested in learning, going deep, and understanding everything that needs to be understood in that particular niche? Do the dynamics, the needs of that niche excite you, that you're willing and able to go deep in it for a long time to come? Maybe that's a good way to think about it. The viability, attractiveness of the niche itself, and then your relationship to it. Is it a good fit with you and your own DNA, your own interest set? So I think that's good, helpful advice. Let's wrap it up on time with a power open mic on Jamie, Rachel, Russ. What sage advice, what wisdom do you have to share with young, mid-career financial advisors that want to emulate your great success in our space, be it with respect to niche segments or beyond? Give us your best advice, please.
Just don't be afraid to ask for help. I think this is my favorite thing about the industry is that we'll never know it all, that it is a continuous stream of evolution and dynamic growth. And for me, that's thrilling and exciting. And I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. In fact, I'm not usually. I surround myself with other people who are just brilliant, who help me deliver the best solutions. So grab as many mentors in as many different subjects as you can, as early as you can. They would like to help you.
I would add to that, our business is definitely a marathon and also a sprint. So sometimes you have to train for both.
And I would just round out Jamie and Rachel's comments by saying, or first agreeing with what Rachel was saying earlier, like competency and technical skills are table stakes. Like you have to have that to be able to serve clients. That's goes without question. But beyond that, I often encourage people to remember that at the end of the day, this is a human business, and we're humans dealing with other humans, and that involves emotions, and often decisions are not made in spreadsheets or financial planning software or other software tools. And so consider I'm not saying you should go take a psychology course, although that wouldn't be the worst thing to do. Consider the behavioral finance aspects, the psychological, the decision-making aspects that go into clients making decisions. And I believe that'll help you become a more effective advisor.
Very well said, all three of you. In closing, I think it's fair to say that the days where financial advisors can pretend to do everything equally well for everybody at all points in time, if they ever existed, they might be over. Everybody wins if and when advisors really go deep in understanding the needs and nuances of different niches, speak their language, understand their tax, trust, and estate situations, and then tailor the solutions in more refined, sophisticated ways to the needs of those audiences. Everybody wins if and when that happens. I'm sure that our audience took away a lot of food for thought and practical tips for their practices, I, for one, Jamie, will remember your saying about don't be afraid to ask. Rachel, your emphasis on the importance of learning and speaking the language, the norms within a practice and the benefits of that ring very true. And Russ, from you, I personally take away the importance of the emotional connectivity with the group that you're serving. In closing, thank you very much for spending the time. And I look forward to, in my mental mind, having dinner tonight with 4 people: Philipp Kasnick, Golda Meir, and Abraham Maslow, with myself at the table in my mental mind. I'll enjoy that greatly. Thank you for the time and attention. And on behalf of Columbia University, have a great day, everybody.